Hi, Dan. Welcome to Funnel Vision podcast. Excited to have you on today to share your tips, tricks, and expertise with our community of sales professionals.
Thanks, Alana. Happy to be here today.
Yeah, so great. We'll start out with our first question here. What is your game-changing tactic, like the one thing that you go to or kind of for building strong client relationships?
For me, I think it all starts with, I rely on proactive curiosity. And by proactive curiosity, what I mean by that is, consistently asking my clients or prospective clients, thoughtful business focused questions. So it really demonstrates that I'm there to, learn about them, learn about their issues, and I'm not there just to sell. I'm there to hopefully solve their problems.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And are there any questions that you ask like as a when you're first meeting with a client that are like a good opener questions that help you kind of get down to that, starting those business conversations?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I a lot of times do is, if it's a very first call, I will say, "Oh, thanks for having me in, but why did you decide to have me come? What is it that you're interested in learning, or what can I help you with?" And then, this is all really part of, the discovery process. And in my mind, the discovery process, begins before you ever make the first sales call. So that is, preparation about the company, the person that you're meeting with, learning as much as you can. And then, of course, when you do meet them, instead of jumping right into, "Hi, I'm Dan Bidwell. This is my product or service," and start talking about it, that's when you go into asking these thoughtful business questions and then stepping back and listening. And, those could be open-ended questions, they could be close-ended questions, um, but a lot of those will come from the preparation that you did prior to the call. That makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Absolutely. What is the best piece of sales advice you've received, and how has that changed your approach to sales and, business?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and it's almost similar to the answer I just gave you a little bit, in that, um, people don't really, buy from companies. They buy from people they trust. And so it's really key that you develop that trust with those individuals. And part of the way that, at least that I've tried to do it is and again, instead of coming in and leading with features or products or services, I'm really coming in to lead with, empathy as an example. Empathy meaning, okay, I understand your, situation. I feel for what it is that you're going through. Clarity is part of that, which is confirming that you really do understand what they're telling you. So a lot of times, you ask them a question, they tell you this is the issue, and you want to go back to them and say, okay, that's great. Let me make sure I understand what you're telling me and then reconfirm that to them. Um, and then really just being consistent in your approach with the client and, not be kind of shifting all over the place depending on what they're telling you, because then that definitely, in my opinion, makes you look very salesy and you lose, credibility. I've often said, it's if you do that, it's kind of the Larry Tate approach, and what that means is, of course, you would have had to watch Bewitched back in the '60s to understand that, but, Larry Tate is a guy who sales saved, in that show, and he was constantly shifting his opinion depending on the answer that the client gave.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense, and I agree. You have to be consistent and lead from that place of, empathy and wanting to solve problems and not selling and not being salesy and just forcing your product on a company or a prospect, but understanding their needs and how to solve their problem.
Absolutely.
So switching over a little bit on topic to AI, what are your thoughts on, everyone's using AI right now. How do you think that's going to shake up the sales world, and in what ways do you see that being, a good tool, and then also maybe something that is not a great tool, but what are your thoughts on AI?
Yeah, I'm really excited about AI. I've got into using it and it almost becomes addicting. But I think the biggest thing, sales is a great use case for AI in general because there's so many things that you can use it to do. You can use it as part of your lead generation, lead scoring. Um, you can use it to, develop proposals in a much quicker time frame. You can use it as part of forecasting. I think the biggest thing there is that AI um, really is going to reduce the grunt work and the tactical work that you need to do as a sales rep, and it's going to save you a tremendous amount of time. And then that time can be used for what's really important in selling, in my opinion, which is developing the relationships. So spending more time with the customer, building that relationship, and then ultimately you have, I think a better quality product that you're delivering to them. So time savings, efficiency, productivity, I think is the biggest thing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, similar to the way that the what we use AI, at Talent Harbor is also like, time savings, being efficient, research and things like that. But, in sales, in recruiting, it's still a people business. It is still, you can't use it for everything. It's gotta be still have to be able to be authentic, have real conversations, but from how I see it, is use that AI to have better conversations, to get more information, to do better research, and yeah, like things like building proposals or getting lead generation and things like that too. So absolutely, agree with you. Um, what do you think is something that a salesperson should stop doing if they want to become more successful?
Um, well, you probably heard this, said a lot, shut up and listen. Yeah, and it kinda gets back to some of the things that we've already talked about, but, salespeople, God love them, they have a tendency to wanna talk a lot, and so what I have found is that, you when salespeople go in to do their discovery talks or discovery meetings, you don't want them, basically, doing a TED talk or, act like they're auditioning for a Netflix special because it's just, you're there to learn. You're there to hear what your client or prospective client has to say. And the more that you're talking, the more, in my opinion, you're losing. And so, if the client is talking more than you, then you are winning. So it all gets back to making it about the client, being client centric. Um, I think so. I just know a lot of reps who struggle with that because they think as a salesperson, it's their job to get this specific message out there and talk about their product or their service. And oftentimes too, even when they do discovery, asking the questions, they many times do it in rapid fire succession, which is also bad. You're there to listen to your client and understand their issues.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it is a common answer is, stop talking. Listen more, but it is the most basic, but also the most important, of all things. Like you have to listen. You're not there to talk. And salespeople, you're right, love to talk. And give everything, but it's so important to be able to listen, and not just like act like you're listening, but truly listen to what the person is saying and digest what they're saying and listen to understand and read between the lines and figure out what their pain points are and what their problem is, not just listen to wait for your turn to talk.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So finding sales talent is tough, right? Finding sales talent is easy. Finding good sales talent and the right people is tough. What are some go-to strategies that you have for like spotting and identifying really great, talented salespeople and rock star hunters?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I try to do is really put a lot of emphasis on sales character versus sales experience. I mean, yes, experience is always important. I don't want to undersell that, but I look for people who number one, they treat, follow up almost like a religion. I mean, they're just consistent about it. Um, people who really prepare for every single meeting. I can't tell you the number of salespeople I've seen in the past who will just, go into a call and kind of wing it and, really haven't done the proper preparation. Um, and also, salespeople who, are willing to own the number and not make excuses. Because the reality is, like I tell a lot of salespeople, sorry, but the number is what the number is once it's assigned. And, we know it's tough and we know things go against us and it may not be our fault, but that's just the business that we're in. And so being able to, take that on and attack that. So when, I'm talking to, reps or interviewing potential reps, I'm really looking for, is the person a self-starter? Do they have a lot of hustle? Um, do they have humility? Because I think that's obviously key in building relationships with people in general, let alone clients. And then, are they good at follow through? And getting them to talk about maybe examples of where they have really done that, and just see how they follow through with me in the interview. I learned that long ago. I think follow-up is one of the most important characteristics that a sales rep can have. Sometimes we have a tendency in sales to think that we always have to have the answer, and of course, we're not going to be able to do that, but what we do have to do is say, "Look, I'm not sure what that answer is, but let me go find out," and then actually follow up in a very prompt manner. I know that, I many years ago, I here in Columbus, Ohio, where I live, I one of my accounts that I worked with was the limited, and I sold to the same group of people 3 different sets of products. So I back in the day, this ain't really dating me, I sold them, a digital equipment, computers to run this kind of process control system they had for their distribution system. Then I had joined Sun Microsystems. I went back, replaced all the deck equipment with Sun equipment, and then when I ultimately moved on to Oracle, I replaced their, Ingress database with an Oracle database, and, I'd love to say it was because I was such a great salesperson, but the reality is, and they told me this, the reason they, always bought from me was because they knew I would always be there and that I was great at follow-up and I didn't BS them. I didn't have the answer, but I made sure I got it or I got the resource and kept those lines of communication open. And so for me, that was, I just think that's critical.
Yeah, what one of the things you said is also, kind of struck me as just so important was it's okay to say I don't have the answer to that. Let me find out. As long as you actually do find out and follow up. And as like sales reps, people think like I need to have every answer to every question, and that's just not true. Like there, you might not know the answer to the question, or there might be something, and it's okay. I tell my team the same. It's okay to say like, you know what, I'm not sure about that. Let me follow back up with you. But once you say that, you must follow up. I mean, that's just the most important part is doing what you say you're going to do and not just hoping that they forget their question or like, oh, they won't remember, something and getting the information and then, following back up is it's just so critical to that process, building trust and them knowing then that you're going to say that you're going to do what you said you're going to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So Dan, tell us a little about who you are, what you do, and where people can find you.
Okay. Well, I am a fractional sales advisor, working with Sales Acceleration. Sales Acceleration is the largest fractional advisor firm in the US. We have over 6,000 clients, over 200, fractional sales advisors, people like myself. The way I got into this business was I, of course, was in sales myself, high tech sales. I sold enterprise software, business to business. Um, I have been in the industry for about 40 years, and about 30 of that in actually the sales management, position, being a VP of sales. But I think most importantly, I've worked for large corporations, but I've worked for startups, and I would say the bulk of my time were for high tech startups. And I've been fortunate. I've had 4 successful exits, and the reason that's important is that a lot of what I do for people is I help them build a path to greater sales revenues, and so that can include a lot of different things. But one of them is building, out their sales infrastructure or helping them improve that sales infrastructure. And by sales infrastructure, I'm talking about things like their sales strategy. Uh, do they have that in place? Their sales methodologies and the processes that they're going to use to, execute that sales strategy. Helping them with their sales organization. So that's more than just hiring salespeople and managing salespeople, but helping them organize the way the sales organization should be for their particular industry and the particular service or product that they're selling. And then, of course, ultimately, I can be an outsourced VP of sales for them on an interim basis as well. And, working with startup companies for as many years as I have, one of the things I had to do is when I'm going into companies that are like 30 people in the company and they have basically no sales organization, you have to wear many, many hats. And so you're doing sales, you're doing, marketing, you're doing almost like, customer support to some degree on these initial new customers that you're getting. So I'd done that for many years, and I decided to get out of corporate America, so to speak, and to work on my own. And I really enjoy focusing on small, medium-sized businesses across all verticals. It doesn't have to be technology. Helping them with these issues. So excited to be doing that, and I find it to be very, very rewarding.
Perfect. Perfect. That's wonderful. And yeah, and then you're on LinkedIn. We'll tag you on this in this post so everybody can see, find out where to find you. And anything else you want to share?
No, I just really appreciate you having me on and having the opportunity to, share some thoughts on the questions that you've asked. And again, I just look forward to meeting more small business owners and working with them to help them expand their sales and feel good about what they're doing in their business.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dan, for being on today. Appreciate you having taken time to be on Funnel Vision and appreciate all your insights. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.